Okay, this is drawing from the article that I uploaded as optional, um, but as per request. So we know that human trafficking is a really devastating global issue, and that it exploits people from all backgrounds. So we have a role in supporting survivors and helping them heal from the immense trauma they've experienced. So let's take a look at the psychological impact of trafficking, the importance of trauma-informed care, and the ways mental health folks are making a difference in survivors' lives. So, what is human trafficking? It's the use of force, fraud, or coercion to control someone for commercial, sexual, or labor exploitation. So, it's a very serious human rights violation that can clearly have devastating psychological impacts and lead to conditions like depression, anxiety, and complex trauma. So, counselors can play a really crucial role in helping people with long-term healing. It's really it's a really widespread issue and it affects communities across the US, not just internationally. And victims are often recruited by people they know, like family members or romantic partners, rather than being abducted as depicted in movies. And both women and girls, as well as men and boys, can be victims of human trafficking. In fact, boys are the fastest growing group of victims. And while sex trafficking is a major form of human trafficking, labor trafficking is also very prevalent but often overlooked. So, the National Human Trafficking Hotline identified over 16,000 likely victims in 2021, but experts believe the true scale of the problem is much larger. So, trafficking is exploiting personal vulnerabilities, power imbalances, and profit opportunities. Some key risk factors include poverty, housing instability, mental health issues, substance use, and adverse childhood experiences. So, certain groups are disproportionately affected due to systemic inequalities and social marginalization, and this includes communities of color, people with disabilities, LGBTQIA plus individuals, and indigenous communities. However, anyone with exploitable vulnerabilities can become a target, and trafficking can happen to anyone. So, from the article, Marjorie Saylor's story about overcoming trafficking and abuse, she grew up believing that violence and exploitation were normal in relationships. She ran away from home at 14, only to fall victim to sex and labor trafficking for 17 years. And now she works to raise awareness and provide services to help others escape trafficking. She emphasizes understanding recruitment tactics, warning signs, and risk factors of trafficking. And of course, her resilience and courage are an inspiration. So trafficking survivors face very significant psychological impacts, including high rates of depression, PTSD, suicidal ideation, and disassociation. And about 71% of survivors experience depression. 61% develop PTSD, resulting in things like sleep disturbances, intrusive thoughts, and hypervigilance. Trafficked homeless youth are 4 times more likely to experience suicidal ideation compared to the general population, and 20% of confirmed child sex trafficking victims display symptoms of disassociation, which can involve that detachment from reality. So the psychological toll of trafficking is severe and long lasting, requiring very specialized trauma informed care and support for survivors. So the key focus this slide is we want to prioritize building a sense of safety to combat that depersonalization, devaluation, and the mistrust that survivors often experience with their traffickers. And it's important to help survivors recognize their own strengths and support their process of recovery and self determination. As service providers, we want to model healthy, non transactional relationships to demonstrate that human connections are not just a means to an end. Um, so, the trauma experienced by trafficking survivors can make traditional therapies like CBT less effective. Many survivors have developed trauma bonds with their traffickers who fulfilled roles typically provided by family or support systems. So, innovative approaches like ACEs based shadow work can help address the root causes of complex trauma through reflective exercises. And it's important to be flexible in the service process and provide warm handoffs from trusted mentors. And understanding each individual's cultural beliefs and perspectives on healing is crucial. So, I think the key focus of this slide is how we take services beyond the traditional office setting to better support survivors of human exploitation. So it highlights three innovative approaches: community-based programs, addressing basic needs, and utilizing medical settings. So community-based programs meet survivors where they are on the streets, in emergency rooms, detention centers, uh, and builds long-term personal, person-centered therapeutic relationships. I could talk more about this in class. Addressing basic needs like food, clothing, and safe spaces for rest and hygiene is crucial. Before providing psychological support, hospital emergency departments can offer confidentiality and safety that survivors may not have when encountering law enforcement. So, this was a quote from Dr. Abigail Judge, which emphasizes the limitation of traditional psychological models for this population who are in survival mode and who don't seek help in typical ways. So, collaboration between mental health and law enforcement is crucial for supporting victims. Mental health folks are training officers to use trauma informed techniques during interactions, and this includes practicing open body language, managing tone, and avoiding interrogation style questioning. So, the goal is to build trust, as many victims fear being charged with a crime if they interact with police. Trauma informed approaches may allay these fears and lead to improved outcomes. Um, yeah. So the violent history of the U.S. government as it relates to Native Americans, and as it involved relegating Native Americans to economically deprived reservations and forced assimilation, has created conditions that make exploitation more likely. Studies have shown that many Indigenous women view the sex trafficking they've experienced as connected to this history of colonization. Um, People are working to address this issue in a couple of ways: raising awareness through presentations and media, dialoguing with law enforcement, and advocating for greater resources, as well as partnering with community elders who understand Indigenous values and healing practices. Mental health work with trafficking survivors requires a humble, community focused, and trauma informed approach. We want to value survivors' lived experiences and partner with them to find solutions rather than imposing our own expertise. It's important to critically engage directly in communities to understand the complex cultural, political, and economic factors shaping survivors' lives. And being trauma informed, especially around complex trauma, is essential for providing effective support. So, we want to advocate for greater resources to address the root causes of trafficking and support survivors' long term recovery and well being.